Hi everyone! Welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we have a long, exciting story in English, perfect for B2 level learners. While you listen, I want you to pay attention to new words and phrases. You can write them down in a notebook, repeat them out loud, and try to use them in your own sentences. After the story, leave a comment telling us which new words or phrases you learned today. I'd love to see your progress. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story or English lesson. Let's get started. Emma was 24 years old, and she lived in a small city near the sea. Every day felt almost the same. She woke up early, made herself a cup of coffee, and walked to the office where she worked as an assistant. Her job was not very exciting. She answered phone calls, sent emails, and organized documents. Sometimes she felt like a robot, repeating the same actions again and again. Although Emma had good friends and a family who loved her, she often felt that something was missing in her life. She dreamed about adventure, about traveling to new places, and about meeting interesting people. But most of the time, she convinced herself that these dreams were unrealistic. One evening, after another long and tiring day, Emma sat near her window and looked at the dark sea. She whispered to herself, "Is this really all there is? Is this my whole life?" That night, Emma didn't know that her life was about to change in a very surprising way. The next morning, Emma followed her usual routine. She woke up, made coffee, and prepared for work. But when she opened her mailbox, she noticed something unusual. Among the normal letters, bills, advertisements, and bank statements, there was one envelope without a name or address. It was made of thick, old-fashioned paper, and it looked mysterious. Curious, Emma opened it immediately. Inside, she found a short note written in elegant handwriting. "Life is waiting for you. Go to the old lighthouse tonight at 9 p.m. Don't be afraid." Emma read the note again and again. She didn't know who had sent it. Was it a joke, a mistake, or something else? During the day, she couldn't concentrate on her work. The words kept repeating in her mind. Life is waiting for you. By the evening, Emma had made a decision. Even though it seemed risky, she felt she had to go to the lighthouse. Something inside her told her that this could be the beginning of the adventure she had always dreamed of. At 8:45 p.m., with her heart beating fast, she started walking toward the old lighthouse at the edge of the sea. The lighthouse stood on a rocky hill at the very end of the coastline. It was an old building, no longer in use, with broken windows and walls covered in moss. For most people, it looked abandoned and even a little scary. But tonight, under the silver light of the moon, it seemed almost magical. Emma walked up the narrow path toward the entrance. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks echoed in her ears, and the wind was strong, pulling at her hair and coat. Her heart was beating so fast she could almost hear it. When she reached the door, she stopped for a moment. "What am I doing here?" she thought. "This could be dangerous. Maybe someone is playing a trick on me." But then she remembered the note. Life is waiting for you, and deep inside, she didn't want to miss this chance. With a deep breath, she pushed the heavy wooden door. It creaked loudly as it opened. Inside, the air smelled of salt, dust, and old wood. The circular staircase rose high into the darkness above. "Hello?" Emma called softly, her voice trembling. At first, there was no answer. She took a few careful steps inside. Suddenly, she heard footsteps from above. Someone was walking down the stairs. Emma froze, her eyes fixed on the shadow that appeared in the dim light. A tall figure slowly came closer. Finally, a man stepped into view. He was in his 30s, wearing a long coat and carrying a lantern that lit his face. He had sharp eyes, but a calm expression. "Emma," he said, as if he had known her for years. She gasped. "How do you know my name?" The man smiled slightly. "Because I've been waiting for you." Emma felt a mix of fear and curiosity. She wanted to run, but at the same time, something about this stranger made her stay. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Daniel, and I have something important to show you, something that will change your life forever." He raised the lantern higher, signaling her to follow him up the spiral stairs. Emma hesitated for a moment, but then, with courage she didn't know she had, she began to climb. Step by step, she moved upward into the unknown. The staircase inside the lighthouse was narrow and steep. Each step echoed through the empty tower. Emma followed Daniel closely, her hand brushing against the cold stone wall as she climbed. The higher they went, the louder the wind whistled through the broken windows. Finally, they reached the top. Daniel pushed open a small door, and they stepped into the lantern room. Normally, a lighthouse would contain a giant light used to guide ships, but here, the lamp was gone. Instead, in the center of the room stood a wooden table covered with strange objects: old maps, a compass that looked ancient, and a small wooden box. The moonlight shone through the glass walls, illuminating everything with a silver glow. Emma felt as if she had stepped into another world. Daniel placed the lantern on the table and turned to her. "I know you have many questions, and I promise you will get answers. But first, I need you to listen carefully." Emma nodded, although her mind was racing. She wanted to ask who he was, why he knew her name, and what this was all about. But something about his calm voice made her stay silent. Daniel opened the wooden box. Inside lay an old key made of brass. It was beautifully decorated with symbols Emma had never seen before. He held it carefully, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "This key," Daniel explained, "opens a door that very few people know about. A door to a place hidden from ordinary eyes, a place full of secrets, but also full of danger." Emma frowned. "Why are you telling me this? I don't even know you." Daniel looked straight into her eyes. "Because, Emma, whether you realize it or not, you are connected to this. You were chosen long ago." "Chosen?" Emma repeated, her voice shaking. "Chosen for what?" He said simply, "For a journey, one that will test your courage and change everything you think you know about the world." Emma laughed nervously. "This sounds crazy. You expect me to believe that I was chosen to, what, go on some adventure with a stranger in an abandoned lighthouse?" He didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled slightly, as if he had expected her reaction. "You don't have to believe me. You only have to decide. If you walk away now, you will return to your ordinary life, safe but empty. If you take this key, your life will never be the same again." He placed the brass key gently on the table between them. Emma stared at it. Her heart was pounding and her hands were shaking. She thought about her boring office job, her endless routine, and the feeling that something important was missing in her life. Then she looked at Daniel, whose calm eyes seemed full of secrets. She whispered to herself, "Maybe this is the chance I've been waiting for." Slowly, with trembling fingers, Emma reached out and picked up the key. Daniel nodded. "Then your journey begins now." The brass key felt heavy and cold in Emma's hand. She turned it over slowly, studying the strange symbols carved into the metal. They looked almost like stars, but not any constellation she recognized. Daniel watched her carefully. "That key belongs to the sea," he said, "and tonight you will see the door it unlocks." Emma frowned. "The sea? What are you talking about?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the window and pointed toward the dark water below. The moon reflected on the surface, turning the waves into silver. Far away, Emma could see something unusual, a faint circle of light glowing just beneath the surface of the water. Her eyes widened. "What is that?" "That," Daniel explained, "is the entrance, a hidden passage beneath the ocean. Only those with the key can open it." Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. A hidden passage under the sea? It sounded impossible, like something from a fantasy novel. And yet, the glowing circle was real. She could see it with her own eyes. "Come," Daniel said, taking the lantern and starting down the stairs again. "We don't have much time. The door will not remain open forever." Emma hesitated for a moment, but then followed him. Her legs shook as she hurried down the spiral staircase, the key clutched tightly in her hand. When they reached the rocky shore, the sound of the waves was louder than ever. Daniel led her along the wet stones until they stood at the edge of the sea. The glowing circle beneath the water shimmered more brightly now, as if calling to them. Daniel turned to her. "You must place the key into the lock yourself. Only then will the door open." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "The lock? Underwater?" He nodded. "Yes. Do not be afraid. The sea will let you breathe as long as you hold the key." Emma stared at him, then at the dark water. Her instincts screamed at her not to do it. But deep inside, another voice whispered that this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that would take her beyond her ordinary life. She took a deep breath, stepped into the icy water, and swam toward the glowing circle. To her amazement, the water around her didn't feel heavy or suffocating. It was as if an invisible force wrapped around her, allowing her to breathe normally. Tiny bubbles danced in the water, and her hair floated gently around her face. At the center of the glowing circle, she found it, a massive stone door built into the seabed. Right in the middle was a keyhole shaped exactly like her brass key. Her hand shook as she reached forward. Slowly, she slid the key into the lock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep rumble, the stone door began to move. Ancient mechanisms turned, and the water around her vibrated. The glowing light grew brighter and brighter until the door slowly swung open. Beyond it was a dark tunnel leading down into the unknown. Emma's heart raced. She turned her head to look back at Daniel, who was waiting on the shore. He raised his lantern and called out, "Go on, Emma. Your story begins there." Emma took one last deep breath, gripped the key tightly, and swam through the door into the mysterious darkness. The tunnel was darker than night. Emma swam forward, her hands brushing the rough stone walls on either side. At first, fear threatened to overwhelm her. The water pressed against her skin, and the silence was heavy. Only the sound of her heartbeat kept her company. But then, she noticed something extraordinary. Small lights began to appear along the walls of the tunnel. First, just a few faint sparks, then hundreds of glowing patterns, like constellations under the sea. They formed shapes, waves, stars, and creatures Emma had never seen before. The deeper she went, the stronger the light became. Finally, after what felt like minutes of swimming, the tunnel opened up into a huge underwater chamber. Emma froze in awe. Before her stretched an entire city beneath the sea. Towers made of crystal rose from the seabed, glowing softly with blue and green light. Roads of polished stone wound between the buildings, and in the distance she saw bridges arching across wide canals. Strange fish, glowing in colors she had never imagined, swam gracefully through the water, lighting up the streets like lanterns. Emma's eyes widened. This is impossible, she thought. This can't be real. And yet, it was. Slowly, she swam forward into the city. As she passed through the streets, she realized the buildings were not empty. Shadows moved inside the windows, and soon figures appeared. People. They looked human, but different. Their skin was pale, almost silver, and their hair floated around them like seaweed. Their eyes shone faintly in the dark, reflecting the light of the city. At first, Emma panicked. She didn't know if they were friendly or dangerous. But the creatures didn't attack her. Instead, they gathered, watching her with curiosity. A child with long silver hair swam closer, smiled shyly, and then darted back to hide behind an older woman. Emma was speechless. Then she heard a voice, not from outside, but inside her head. "Welcome, key bearer." Emma turned around confused. No one had spoken aloud, yet the words were clear in her mind. The crowd parted and a tall figure emerged. Unlike the others, this one wore long, flowing robes that shimmered like the surface of the sea. On his head rested a crown of coral. His eyes glowed brighter than all the rest. "You have opened the door," the voice continued, though his lips didn't move. "You are the first from the surface in many years. We have been waiting for you." Emma's mouth opened, but no words came out. The figure raised his hand, and instantly the crowd bowed their heads in respect. Then he swam closer and extended his hand toward her. "Come, Emma," the voice said gently. "There is much you must learn about who you are and why you were chosen." Emma's chest tightened. She had dreamed of adventure her whole life, but nothing like this. A city under the sea, mysterious people, and a king who seemed to know her name and her destiny? She hesitated only a second before slowly reaching out her hand. The moment she touched his, the world around her glowed even brighter, and suddenly she knew her life would never be the same. The moment Emma touched the king's hand, a warm energy spread through her body. It felt like electricity, but soft and comforting, as if the sea itself had welcomed her. The king guided her through the glowing streets of the underwater city. The people bowed their heads as they passed, whispering words Emma couldn't understand. The city seemed alive. Light flowed through the crystal towers, fish illuminated pathways, and even the stone roads pulsed faintly, as if carrying the heartbeat of the ocean. Finally, they entered a vast palace built into a cliff of coral and stone. Its doors opened like seashells, revealing a grand hall filled with shimmering light. Emma gasped. The walls were covered with murals that told stories. Ships sailing across stormy seas, strange creatures rising from the depths, and humans standing side by side with the silver-eyed people of the ocean. The king motioned for her to sit on a throne-like chair made of polished pearl. He remained standing, his robe flowing around him like water. He said, not aloud, but again in her mind, "You have many questions." Emma nodded quickly. "Yes. Who are you? Who are these people? And why do you keep saying you were waiting for me?" The king's glowing eyes softened. "We are the Marin, the people of the deep. Long ago, before history was written, we lived together with humans. We shared knowledge, traded across the seas, and even built cities together. But humans grew fearful of our powers and tried to erase our existence. So we sank beneath the waves, closing our doors to the surface world. Emma listened in silence, her heart racing. She felt like she was hearing a secret that no one on the surface had ever imagined. The king continued, "Every few generations, a human is chosen, a key-bearer, someone who carries the blood of both worlds, someone who can unlock the passage between the land and the sea. You, Emma, are the next." Emma shook her head. "That's impossible. I'm just an ordinary woman. I work in an office, I have friends, a family, but I'm nothing special." The king gave her a small smile. "Do you truly believe that? Haven't you always felt different, like something inside you was waiting, like your life was missing a piece you couldn't explain?" She froze. He was right. She had always felt that way, but she had never told anyone. Her voice trembled. "But how? How am I connected to you?" The king raised his hand, and one of the murals on the wall began to glow. It showed a human woman standing beside a Marin man. In the picture, they held a glowing key between them. "Your great-grandmother," the king explained. "She was one of us. She left the sea to live among humans, but the bond was never broken. The key chose you because our worlds are written in your blood." Emma's eyes widened. She thought about her grandmother, who had always told her stories about the sea, stories that sounded like fairy tales. Could they have been memories of the truth? She felt dizzy. "So, I'm part of this world?" The king nodded. "Yes, and that means you carry a responsibility. The balance between the sea and the land is fragile. Soon, something will threaten both worlds, and only you can stand between them." Emma's hands trembled. She looked down at the brass key still clutched tightly in her palm. Just yesterday, she had been sitting at her office desk, bored and dreaming of adventure, and now she was being told she was the bridge between two worlds. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "This is too much." The king leaned closer, his voice echoing in her mind. "No, Emma, this is only the beginning." For the next few days, Emma stayed in the underwater city. The Marin people welcomed her with respect and curiosity. They showed her their traditions, glowing gardens where plants swayed like flames, libraries carved from shells where knowledge was stored in crystals, and schools where children learned to swim faster than dolphins. At first, Emma felt like a tourist in a dream. She touched everything, asked endless questions, and tried to memorize every detail. But deep inside, she couldn't escape one thought. The king's words. Soon, something will threaten both worlds. One evening, Daniel appeared again. Emma was surprised to see him walking freely among the Marin, as if he belonged there. "You didn't think I'd leave you alone, did you?" he said with a small smile. Emma crossed her arms. "You knew everything. You brought me here. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Daniel looked serious. "Because you had to choose it yourself. If I had told you in the beginning, you might not have believed, but now you've seen it with your own eyes." Before Emma could answer, the ground beneath them trembled. The glowing lights of the city flickered for a moment, and a low, deep sound rolled through the water like thunder. The Marin people stopped what they were doing and looked around in fear. Emma grabbed Daniel's arm. "What was that?" He didn't reply. Instead, he turned sharply toward the palace. Inside, the king was already waiting, his glowing eyes darker than before. Around him, Marin guards stood tense, holding weapons that looked like spears made of crystal. "It has begun." The king's voice filled Emma's head. "The shadows of the deep are waking." Emma shivered. Shadows of the deep? What are those? The king raised his hand, and the mural on the wall changed. This time, Emma saw terrible creatures, giant dark figures with glowing red eyes, rising from the abyss. Their bodies looked like twisted versions of sea creatures, part eel, part shark, part nightmare. They were banished long ago, locked away in the deepest trenches of the ocean. But humans on the surface have been disturbing the sea, drilling, polluting, breaking the balance. Now the shadows are waking, hungry for destruction. If they rise fully, they will destroy not only our city, but also your world above. Emma felt her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to imagine these creatures reaching the surface, attacking ships, maybe even cities. It was too terrifying. The king stepped closer. "This is why you were chosen, Emma. Only the key bearer can enter the abyss gate. Only you can lock the shadows away again." Emma shook her head. No, I can't do this. I'm not a warrior. I don't know how to fight monsters." Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to fight them alone, but you do have to be brave enough to face them." Emma looked between Daniel and the king, her hands trembling. Just days ago, her biggest problem had been answering emails on time. Now, she was being asked to save 2 worlds from ancient monsters. The king placed a crystal spear on the table before her. Its tip glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Take it," he said. "Your choice brought you here. Your courage will carry you forward." Emma stared at the weapon. Slowly, she reached out and wrapped her fingers around it. The moment she touched it, the spear glowed brighter, as if recognizing her. Daniel gave her a firm nod. "Then it's decided. We're going to the abyss." The next morning, the city was tense. The glowing streets were quieter than before, and Marin guards swam along the borders, watching the dark waters beyond. Everyone knew the shadows were stirring. Emma stood at the palace gates, holding the crystal spear. The weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders, but she also felt a strange determination growing inside her. She wasn't just a board office assistant anymore. She was the key bearer, and the future of 2 worlds depended on her. Daniel appeared beside her, carrying a lantern brighter than before. "The abyss gate lies far to the south," he said. "It's a place even the Marin fear. The deeper we go, the darker and more dangerous it will become." Emma swallowed hard, but nodded. "Then let's go." They swam through the city and out into the open ocean. At first, the water was clear and full of glowing fish, but the farther they went, the fewer lights remained. The water grew colder, the current stronger, and shadows stretched across the seafloor. Hours seemed to pass as they descended deeper. Strange creatures watched them from the dark, some with long, glowing tendrils, others with teeth like daggers. Emma's heart raced, but Daniel kept her steady, guiding her through narrow canyons and past towering cliffs. Finally, they reached a vast trench. It was so deep that Emma couldn't see the bottom. Black smoke rose from cracks in the ground, and the water felt heavy, as if filled with secrets. At the edge of the trench stood 2 enormous stone pillars, carved with the same strange symbols as her brass key. Between them shimmered a dark portal, swirling like liquid shadow. Emma froze. "That's it? The abyss gate?" Daniel nodded grimly. "Yes, beyond that lies the prison of the shadows. If we don't seal it, they will escape." Suddenly, the water around them shook violently. A terrible sound like a roar mixed with thunder echoed from the depths. Emma tightened her grip on the spear. From the swirling portal, giant red eyes appeared, glowing like fire in the darkness. The shadows were already pushing against the gate. Daniel's face was pale in the lantern light. "We're out of time." He looked at Emma. "You must use the key. Place it into the heart of the gate. The spear will protect you, but the rest is up to you." Emma's hands shook as she pulled out the brass key. The symbols on it glowed brighter than ever, matching the carvings on the stone pillars. The gate pulsed violently, and the roar grew louder. Suddenly, dark shapes began to push through. Massive claws, long tails, and twisted bodies forced their way into the world. The shadows were coming. Emma took a deep breath, holding the key in one hand and the glowing spear in the other. She whispered to herself, "I'm not afraid. Not anymore." And then she swam straight toward the abyss gate. David's life after Paris was not the same. He returned home, but he was not the same person who had left months earlier. The shy, uncertain young man had grown into someone stronger, more confident, and more open to life. At first, he felt a little lost. The streets of his hometown looked smaller, and the daily routine seemed slower. But inside, David carried a treasure. The experiences, friendships, and lessons that Paris had given him. He often remembered sitting by the Seine, the laughter of friends, or the sound of French music in the air. He also remembered Marie. Even though they had chosen different paths, he never felt sadness. Instead, he felt grateful for what they had shared. Their story was not about forever, but about growth and discovery. David decided to share his journey. He started a small blog where he wrote stories about his time abroad, the people he met, and the things he learned. To his surprise, many readers were inspired by his words. Some even decided to travel themselves. One evening, while writing, David realized something important. Life is not about staying in one place or finding one single answer. Life is about the journey, about trying, failing, learning, and moving forward. He closed his laptop, smiled, and whispered to himself, "The story never ends. It just keeps going." And with that thought, David felt ready for the next chapter of his life, whatever it would bring.